If you've been told to take magnesium for your constipation, you've probably grabbed whatever was cheapest at the chemist, and there's a good chance it was magnesium oxide. It works. There's decent research behind it, so why don't I reach for it first with my clients? Today I want to walk you through the actual mechanism of how magnesium moves your bowels, why oxide works the way it does, and why I still start almost every client on citrate or bisglycinate instead, especially if SIBO or EMO is part of your picture. Magnesium works by pulling water into your gut. That softens the stool and it gets things moving. Think of it as nature's stool softener. Low magnesium intake is linked to a higher risk of constipation, and most of us just don't get enough from food alone. But here's the thing, not all magnesium behaves the same way in the body, and that difference is what today's episode is really about. So let's start with magnesium oxide. When you swallow it, your stomach acid breaks it down into magnesium chloride. Then further along, your pancreas releases its own secretions, and that converts it again. This time into magnesium carbonate and magnesium bicarbonate. Those are the compounds that actually pull water into your colon, soften your stool, and speed things up. Here's the key part. Oxide only works after this whole multi-step conversion process, and even then, only about 4% of it actually gets absorbed. The rest stays in your gut, which is exactly why it works as a laxative in the first place. So, does it actually work? Yes, there's good evidence for that. One trial gave 34 women with mild to moderate constipation 1.5 grams of magnesium oxide a day for 28 days, and the results were solid. Colon transit time nearly halved. It dropped from over 75 hours down to under 42. Bowel movements went from less than 2 a week to just over 6. And in a separate study, magnesium oxide worked just as well as senna, a common herbal laxative for chronic constipation. So let's be clear, oxide isn't bad. It works and there's solid evidence behind it. Now here's the part I find really interesting. That same process that makes oxide work also does something else. It makes your colon more alkaline. And separately, we know that the organisms behind methane-driven constipation, that's SIBO-methane or EMO, aren't even bacteria. They're archaea, and they don't like an acidic gut. They actually thrive when things are more alkaline. The bacteria that keep them in check, on the other hand, prefer a more acidic environment. So put those two things together and you get a pretty compelling theory. If you've got methane-driven constipation, taking an alkalizing laxative like magnesium oxide might actually be feeding the very organisms that are slowing you down and contributing to constipation. Now, I want to be upfront. This hasn't been proven in a clinical trial. It's a biologically sound theory, not a proven fact, but it's exactly why I'm cautious with oxide in these cases. By contrast, magnesium citrate and bisglycinate don't break down in your stomach the same way as oxide does, so they're less likely to have that same alkalizing effect on your colon. That hasn't been directly tested either, but the reasoning holds up. So here's my actual clinical approach. Citrate and bisglycinate are both far better absorbed than oxide. They're gentler on your gut and they come with extra benefits too, including support for your nervous system, which matters if stress is playing a role in your constipation. My go-to is this. Start with magnesium citrate in the evening. Once your bowel movements start to regulate, transition over to magnesium bisglycinate for even better absorption, plus that added nervous system support. Most of the research on magnesium citrate uses around 300 milligrams of elemental magnesium a day. If you're concerned about how your body might respond, you can start on a lower dose and build up to that amount over a week or so. If you get loose stools along the way, that's your sign to ease back slightly. And if you're on medications or if you have kidney issues or if you're unsure if magnesium is appropriate for you, check with your practitioner before you start supplementing. Now here's the bigger picture. If your constipation actually gets worse after you increase your magnesium, your fiber or your fruit, that's a red flag. Don't push it. That's usually a sign there's something else going on and it's worth getting properly investigated. And remember, magnesium is just one tool, not the whole toolkit. Fluid, fiber, exercise, and actually establishing what's driving your constipation in the first place all matter just as much. And if methane turns out to be part of your picture, you'll often need more targeted strategies on top of that. If you've been taking magnesium and it's just not cutting it, or if it seems to be making things worse, self-prescribing can only take you so far. That's exactly when having someone look at your case with a fresh set of eyes can make all the difference. If that's you, come and see me for an appointment. All the links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening today.